Hi everyone and welcome. So today I'd like to show you the inventory system for my upcoming game. It's very much still work in progress, the game. The inventory system should be pretty much done. I'm not really planning on changing it. It works fine and yeah, so I'm planning on keeping it like this. But basically, how does the inventory system work in my game? It's very simple. There are interactive objects in my scene. Some objects, they don't need to be picked up or used, so such as this object doesn't really require an inventory, this box, but things like this crowbar, if I press E, you can see that I picked it up and the actual image of the crowbar will appear at the bottom of my screen. The same goes, for example, for this key card. If I pick it up, you will see that the crowbar will slightly move to the left and it will give space to the key card on the right. So I picked it up, I have it, I can use both of them right now, and I've got them at the bottom of my screen. Now, it's a very let's say straightforward system. It's purely focused on UI. Cleanliness, do you say? Or yeah, well, basically having a simple UI which it doesn't really clutter your screen. Very simple, very direct, shows you the stuff you have, and if you use one of the items, so for this third locker, a crowbar is required, so if I press on it, the crowbar will disappear from my inventory, basically. Very simple, and you'll see that if I run towards the door, I can use my key card. And that's how the inventory system works. Pick up items, use items, that's how it works. It's fairly simple. So let's jump into it and I'll show you the logic behind the inventory system. Hi guys, so before jumping onto the actual blueprints, I would like to explain visually how the inventory system works, because if I jump immediately into the blueprints, it will be a mess. It's not really easy to understand, but once you understand it visually, it's actually pretty easy, to be honest. So I'll go through it right here first, and then we can jump onto UE5. Now, how is my canvas actually structured? How is my widget structured? I've got a canvas, which is this big green box, which essentially is a container for every UI component. Then I've got this horizontal box, this black box. Now, the horizontal box is, I use it as a container for all my object images. So as you saw in the demo, when I pick up an object, this object gets destroyed from the scene and an image of that object appears in my inventory, so at the bottom of my screen. And this image will actually be inside one of these scale boxes, which will then get moved inside my horizontal box as a child of my horizontal box when I pick it up. Okay, so as I said, my horizontal box is nothing but a container for my images, and the reason why I use the horizontal box is because I can size the horizontal box according to how many objects I picked up, and I can resize it once I use these objects. So basically, it's a movable container. Okay, it's a deformable container, my horizontal box. This is why I use it, and I'll show you how I use it right now. So let's say I go around my scene and I pick up one object. What happens? Let's go to the next slide. As you can see, one of my first my first scale box, or could be my second or my third, it doesn't really matter. The one related to that object in the scene that contains the actual image of that object will be taken from outside of the canvas and it will be placed inside my horizontal box. Then an animation will play where the image will blend in. Okay, the alpha of the image will increase from 0 to 1. Okay, so that it's essentially quite organic. You can see the this object slowly fading in the inventory. Now the tricky part. Let's say I go around and I pick up a second object. Now, what happens when I pick up a second object? let's go to the next slide. Okay, there is already a mistake here. This box should be gone, because when I pick up a second object, basically another box with that new object inside will be taken from outside of the canvas, and it will be placed inside my horizontal box. However, and this is the tricky part, when I place the new object, the second object, the scale box will have a horizontal size of 0. Why do I do this? Because if I place my scale box inside the horizontal box with large size, my horizontal box, the black one, will not be large enough to host both of my images. So what will happen, we'll have a situation where, I can show you here roughly what will happen. We'll have a situation where my horizontal box was this big, and it had one image. Okay, it had one image inside. Now, let's say that my horizontal box now, in the next frame, after I pick up my second object, what happens is that my second object will be placed inside my horizontal box that has got the same size, together with the first object. So what will happen is that these two objects will drop in size, and I will have stretched out objects which look very, very bad. Okay. Or what could also happen if you told the scale boxes to maintain a constant aspect ratio, this could also happen. So a situation where both boxes become really small because they cannot fit together inside the horizontal box. Okay? Keep this in mind. Basically, the moment you add a second box, you have to set it at size 0 initially, so that your first box, so your original image, maintains its current size, its full current size, and it does not get deformed. Now, this is the tricky bit. The moment you add this second box, what you can do is you can slowly start increasing the size of your horizontal box at the same rate as you increase the size of your scale box, of your image, basically. When I say scale box, I mean image, okay? Scale box, because these are scale box with images inside. I will show you in Unreal what I mean by that, but basically they're scale boxes, components with images inside. So when I say scale box or when I say image, I mean the same thing. It's not technically the same thing, but basically, yeah, that's what I mean. So what you have to do is, as I said, you have to start increasing the size of your horizontal box, and at the same time start increasing the size of your scale box, of your second scale box. Okay? At some point you will reach a situation where you will have an horizontal box which is large enough to host 2 full-size scale boxes, and the second scale box has reached its maximum size, basically. Okay? At this point, you will see, but basically what I do at this point is I turn on the image from the second scale box. So the image from the first scale box was always there because we picked it up earlier, and now I can blend in the image from the second scale box. Why do I blend it only now and not before? I blend it only now because if I blend it before, when I'm still, increasing the size of both boxes, then the image will be stretched, or actually will be compressed, it will be squashed, and it will look like shit. Okay, sorry my wording, but yeah, it will look really bad. So essentially I blend in the image, I increase the alpha of the image only when both scale boxes fit well inside the horizontal box. Now, I hope this is clear. It's a bit tricky, but I think it's at the end of the day, it's an easy concept to understand. It's a bit tricky maybe how I explained it, but this is the best I can actually put it in words and pictures. Okay. There is another point which is really important and I have to mention is that if I increase the horizontal box size, okay, if I increase the horizontal box size, let me show you. So if this was my original horizontal box with my original imaging size, and let's say I want to add a second image, if I add the second image and I only let's say I only increase the size of the horizontal box and the size of the scale boxes, they will be offset to the right, as you can see. If this is the center of the screen, let's draw it in orange. So the center of the canvas is in orange. If this is the center of the canvas and I increase the horizontal box size, it will only go to the right because the actual X size will only increase the horizontal box to the right. So what you have to do, you have to also recenter the horizontal box every single frame. Okay, so essentially what I mean by that is that on the next frame, I do not only increase the horizontal box size and the scale box size, but I also recenter the horizontal box, okay, with the screen, essentially. I also recenter it. So the horizontal box both increases in size and moves slightly to the left to compensate for that increase in size and to maintain a central position to the screen. Okay, so I think we covered basically the difficult part. Now all of this has to be put in code. So in the next step, I will show you how this works in blueprints. Okay, so now we are on Unreal 5 and we are on my widget essentially. So this is called the WB gameplay. Now in this widget, as I showed you in the Paint, we've got the canvas, then we've got our horizontal box, and then we've got the scale boxes with the images. So when I said scale box with image, what I meant is that it's a scale box, as you can see, and then it contains as a child an image, basically. And the image is now basically it's off, the alpha is 0, but when the alpha is fully visible, you will see something like this, essentially. So this is like a key card, and in this case I've got, in this other scale box, I've got a crowbar. So that's the one I picked up. Yeah. Now, as you can see, all these scale boxes are outside of the canvas as of now. But let's go on to the code and let's review the code. So here I'm in Designer, I'll go into Graph, and here is the function that I actually use to animate the inventory. Now, it's a bit of a messy one, but it's very clearly split into 3 different sections. And I'll explain how it works. First, before explaining all of this code, I have to mention that in the event graph, I use a event tick to call this animate inventory icons method every single frame. Okay, so every single frame I'm calling this method, and I'm feeding to this method the delta time of each frame, so the time taken for each frame to be completed, essentially, which I will need afterwards to actually lerp and scale the size of the horizontal and scale boxes. So if we go inside the animate inventory icons, it's the function that I showed you before. So we've got 3 different sections, as I was saying. We've got the top section, which gets played when we add inventory items to our inventory. The bottom section, which is played when we remove items from our inventory. And then the final section, which is actually the control of the horizontal box, okay? The size of the horizontal box. Essentially, on the top part, we control the size of the image of the scale box and image that we just added to the inventory. on the bottom size, we control the size of the image that we just removed from the inventory. And on the last box, we control the size of the horizontal box, basically. Now, let's start from the top box. Now, the first check I do is basically I have a Boolean which checks if I just picked up or if I just used an item. If I picked up an item, it means that we need to go on the top section, because it means that we need to add an image to our horizontal box. But if I used an item, it means that I have to go on the bottom part, because the image has to be removed from the inventory. Okay, so let's go first at the top. Let's say we add a box, or sorry, we add a scale box or an image to our horizontal box, to our inventory. Now I do a first check, but you don't really have to look at this. I'll come back to this later, most likely. It's basically, this is actually, I can briefly explain it. This is done to, as you can see in the comment, if we go from pick or used false to true without having deleted the object from the inventory, because that can happen in here. It can happen potentially that I've used an object, but very quickly I picked up another one immediately after, before giving the chance to this code to reach this point, the remove from parent, which actually removes the scale box from the horizontal box. So in that case, in the case where I use an item and pick one really, really quickly, and I don't give a chance to that bottom code to do its thing, I come here, and what I do is I say, well, the item there is an item to delete, which I stored in memory. That item to delete, if it's valid, so if there is an actual item to delete, then remove it from the parent, if I haven't done it before. Okay, that's all I do. If there is nothing to delete, which means that something has been deleted, or that item has been deleted before, or there is really nothing to delete, then I can just move forward and not remove anything from my parent. Now, important point, that the parent of the item that has to be deleted is the horizontal box. Always remember that every image / scale box goes into the horizontal box. Now let's actually do let's go into the main code. Now in the main code, for adding an image, what I do is, first of all, I check that there is an image to add. So I have a reference in memory to an item to add. That comes from other parts of the code, which I'll not show you in here. But basically, once you have a reference for that, you check if it's valid. Now, if it's valid, what we do is we move on to this branch. This branch checks that the item to add is equal to the previous item to add. Now, if the item to add is equal to the previous item to add, basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip through all the logic and go directly to scaling my horizontal box size. What does that mean? It means that it's a situation in which basically my item to add has already been added, essentially. Okay, so if my item to add is the same as my previous item to add previous, which is a reference that I take after I add my item, basically, it means that I've already added it to my inventory. Okay, so skip the whole adding logic and just keep on scaling my horizontal box. My horizontal box, keep in mind that once it reaches a certain scale, this code will keep on running, but the horizontal box size will not actually change. It will maintain constant. Okay, so maintain the constant. Basically what I do is I maintain a constant horizontal box size. However, if my item to add has not been added before, then the branch will be false, and I will run into this set size. Now this set size is what I told you before as the setting size of the scale box. I do this every frame. Keep in mind, this code, as I said before, this code runs every frame because I'm slowly adjusting the size of the scale boxes and horizontal box every frame, okay? So what I do here is I set the size of my scale box, so of my image. How do I do that? Well, I take the item to add, my reference in memory to the item to add. I take the horizontal box slot. What does that mean? Basically, if I show you back in Designer, one of my scale boxes, so one of my images, they have got this slot, this canvas panel slot. So what I do is I take a reference to the component, this component specifically, and the size in the x direction, the horizontal size of this component. So if I go back to the graph, you can see that I take the horizontal box slot and I take the size of this component, okay? I take the size. Now, once I take the size, basically what I have to do is I have to take the slate child size. This is just a struct in Unreal, and this is the way you have to do it essentially, from my understanding at least. If you want the float, you can't just take the size. You need to break the slate child size so that you can actually find the float value of that size. Once I do that, I take the value of the horizontal box, which will be between 0 and 1, and I feed it to a lerp box. Now this float lerp, what it does is it takes the size of my scale box, the horizontal size of my scale box every frame, and it lerps the size between its own size, the size that I feed, and 1, so that I can smoothly move towards the value of 1, okay? And I do this by feeding essentially, as you can see here, I do this by feeding my frame duration, which is t delta, which I was feeding in before, as I showed you, from my tick event, multiplied by some multiplier, okay? This will just speed up or slow down the increase of the scale box size. Now, once I do the lerp, I will get a value out of this lerp, which will be every frame it will be closer to 1, and I feed it to a make slate child size component. This will essentially give me a slate child size structure, which can then be fed to the set size method, okay? Now, I cannot feed the float directly because the method set size wants a slate child structure. So that's the reason why I'm working with slate child size structures. It's because, or size, the reason why I do it, it's because the set size method wants that format. You know, it takes an input it takes a slate child size structure as an input. And my target is nothing but my horizontal box slot, my slot essentially of my item to add. Okay, so basically the slot of my image, okay, which I showed you before. It's this one. If I go here, scale box, here, the slot, okay. Now, if I go back to my graph, what you can see is that I basically, so on the next frame, if my size was 0 of my image, so we're talking about this scenario, the image is 0 size, is basically has no thickness. In the next frame, what will happen is that all this thing will happen, and I will set the size to slightly higher, okay? So a number which will be between 0 and 1, okay? Given a certain alpha value, which is essentially the lerp value. Okay. Once we set the size, which will be a value slightly closer to 1, so the actual scale box will have slightly increased in horizontal size. At that point, we go onto this branch which checks if the size of my scale box, the horizontal size of my scale box, is larger than 0.95. So as long as the size is smaller than 0.95, as I told you, I do not want to show the image. I just want the size of the horizontal box and the scale box to adjust. Okay, I don't want, as I told you here, I'm not going to show the image here until I reach the full size of the box. The box will be there, but there will be nothing in it. You will only see the first image, okay, of the inventory. Here there will be nothing. So basically, as long as our scale box is less than the size of our scale box is less than 0.95, what we will do is we will go to false, and false goes directly to setting up the horizontal box size, which we will see later. Okay, we will see later. In case our scale box has reached the size of 0.95, so very close to 1, so the 100% mark basically, we'll switch to true. And what true will do is it will play a blend-in animation which will actually show the image. Okay, so this animation does nothing but blend in the image of the object that belongs to that scale box. Okay, then we move forward, and what we do is we add this item to the items to add previews. So as you can see, the item to add is taken and is added to the item to add previews, because if we have to add a new item later on, we know that we know that it will be different. It will be different from our item to add previously. So this is why I'm adding it to this is why I'm adding my item to add to the item to add previews, because in some next iteration we can do another check basically to cross check that we're not actually adding the same item. And next, what I do after this, I move forwards and I go on to the horizontal box size manipulation. Okay.